What's up, guys? This is the Honest Outlaw here, and today we are going to be talking about the best pistol of 2018, and that is the CZ Shadow 2. Before I get into it, I want to mention my Patreon supporters. Thank you guys very much. The channel wouldn't run as smoothly without you guys, I promise you that. For that, we do a monthly giveaway for guns and gear related items. Also want to mention ammo.com, link in the description below, for $20 off an order of 200 bucks, and my Instagram. You want to see cool guns before you hit the reviewing table? Check out my Instagram. Now we'll get back to the gun. What is the Shadow 2? What is a steel-framed, double single-action pistol with a manual safety. The Shadow itself is an improved version of the famous CZ75, made specifically for competition shooting, although it would make a great home defense gun as well. However, it is a little bit hefty. You wouldn't want to carry it all day because the Shadow 2 weighs around 46 ounces. It has internal slide rails to help out with bore axis, front and rear cocking serrations, adjustable fiber optic sight with a light rail to bottom so you can use it for home defense. It also has pretty good looking removable aluminum grips in case you want to switch them out for other grips like I have on my AccuShadow. I do have two versions of the Shadow 2 and a version of the Shadow 1 to compare it to today on the table. So let's take a look at them real quick, and you can see this is my original Shadow. This happens to be a Gen 1 AccuShadow. So it has the barrel bushing on it from CZ Custom. It also has the CZ Custom short reset trigger, which I'm a huge fan of. That is probably the best upgrade that you can get for your Shadow pistol, and it's one of the only ones that actually needs right from the factory. This is a stock Shadow 2. You can see some of the upgrades and some of the differences between the Gen 1 and the Gen 2 already are pretty noticeable. For example, the dust cover only has one cut in it as opposed to a full pick rail, and this one is 4.5 ounces heavier. Most of that is in the frame, believe it or not, so it makes it recoil a little bit less in this gun. It also has an extended mag release, as you can see right there, and it has a significantly improved rear sight. Out of all the complaints of the original Shadow, the rear sight is the one I complain about the most, and two reasons for that. One, because it constantly came loose on this little ratchet mechanism here, and my drop would always be off. And the second thing that I had, both of my original Shadows, the dovetail on the rear sight moves around at will. So I've already fixed that on my other one, and I will be fixing it on this one as well. I'm actually going to send this one into CZ Custom and have the Shadow 2 rear sight put on it, so hopefully I will avoid those issues in the future. Some other things that you're going to find about the Shadow 2 that's nice is the beaver tail is cut higher and smoother and feels more comfortable. Also, the undercut is smoother and more comfortable as well. That is one knock on the original Shadow. As you can see here, the trigger guard is a little bit lower, the beaver tail is a little bit lower. So along with the extra added weight to the Shadow 2, it also, you can get higher up on the pistol, controlling that recoil even more, making really tenths of a second faster on the Shadow 2.
Got it.
Okay.
Yep.
Before we go any further, I'll show you my upgraded version of the Shadow 2, which is the one I've shot for most of the testing for this video, and it is the AccuShadow as well, making it just a hair more accurate, but really what I bought it for was, again, that CZ Custom trigger, making it lighter on the double action, and very, very nice in the single action. The single action trigger on the CZ Custom Shadow 2 rivals any 1911 I've ever had. So you can see here the double action is very smooth, and the double action is lighter than a lot of striker fired pistols that I've fired. The double action, I would say, I think mine's around 6 pounds. Super insane, super smooth all the way through. You can see the reset is crazy short. It's 1911 short, making this pistol even faster already with the added weight, the lower bore axis that you're gonna have, and the fact that the trigger is improved not only on the CZ Custom, but the trigger is actually improved from the Gen 2, I believe, because I think all the new Shadow 2s come with a version of the short reset trigger. Yep, I believe they do. Don't quote me on that, but this gun is exceptionally fast to shoot. Now, there are lots of divisions you can shoot the Shadow 2 in, but mainly the one you're going to see it in is production division. Because it has a rail, unlike the TSO, you can actually use it for home defense. So the first category that we always rate semi-automatic pistols on is reliability. And I would have to say, all of these on the table are fantastic. I would say that the Shadow 2s have actually been slightly more reliable than the original Shadow 1, which is pretty impressive. I had 3,000, 4,000, something like that, rounds through the Accu Shadow with 0 failures. I have another 1,000 or so at least through the Shadow 2, no failures. Very, very few failures in comparison to almost any other gun that I've ever owned. The Shadow series of pistols are extremely reliable, and in my opinion, the most reliable competition gun that you can buy. Now, durability is great, I would say. 10,000 plus rounds at least through the pistols on the table, but you are going to experience a couple of parts breakages here and there if you're unlucky, which I happen to be. And on the Shadow 2, the Accu Shadow, I actually experienced a problem with the front sight falling off, and I sent that back to CZ Custom, and they had it back to me within a week with a new front sight, something to do with them not pinning it correctly or something like that. After the first couple hundred rounds, the sight completely fell off, disappeared in the grass, didn't have one. So instead of just buying it online, putting it myself, I just sent the gun back for free, and they shipped it back to me for free with no problems. Also, I had a bit of an issue with the bushing as well. The bushing was on there super tight, so while I was already sending it back, they just fixed that as well. None of that is a knock on CZ. The bushing itself and the sight, they were put on by CZ Custom. Now we'll get into accuracy. And this thing cooks with gasoline. What can I say? It is extremely accurate. In all of my accuracy videos, I talk about two things. I talk about sights and trigger. And the trigger, I've already showed you, is fantastic. And the sights are also fantastic. These sights, in my opinion, are better than the ones that came on the PPQ, and they're better than a lot of 1911 sights. They're better than a lot of competition sights. I'm extremely impressed with the Shadow 2 version of the sights. And again, you can see the sight picture from the Gen 1 here real quick in comparison. The front sight seems to be the same. It's kind of hard to hold both of these in focus at the same time, but the one thing I really like about the Shadow 2 is that you see how it has more of an angle here that points your eye to the target a little bit more, and it pushes your focus to the middle, to the front sight. I really like these, the rabbit ears are cut off. And I also like how smooth this is because the slide is so small, which helps with recoil control, absolutely. But the downside of that is if you have malfunctions or you have to operate the slide in some way, there's less to grip onto. Now with the Shadow 2, that's not a problem. You can go to the rear right away and it's going to be no issues. But on the Shadow 1 here, you see how those big sharp points right there? Well, that's taken more of my skin than I'd like to admit. So much so that you can actually see that I have filed them down in certain areas because they kept ripping my skin, and every time I'm trying to do a malfunction clears, I lose half my hand. I didn't like that. They really improved that with the Shadow 2. Couple the sights and the trigger with the speed of the trigger and the frame, and you have a gun that can shoot at distance very, very quickly. If I had to go toe-to-toe with somebody like in a shooting competition of some kind, I would pick this gun over almost any other gun besides maybe a tuned-up open 2011. The Shadow 2, I've seen them for $1,050, but average price for around $1,200 to me actually shoots better than the TSO. And it has the ability to do the double action in case you need double strike capability or in case you wanted to carry it or whatever you wanted it for, you have that ability. You can always cock to single action, just like the TSO. You still have that amazing trigger, and it's a little bit shorter overall, so to me it balanced better and it transitioned quicker. Also, you have that light rail, so if you want to buy a gun for home defense and for competition, this is far and away the better option to me than the Tactical Sport Orange. I added a pair of lock grips. I actually prefer these a lot more over the standard aluminum ones because as you can see here, they're a little bit thicker. And I don't like how thin these grips are, although a lot of people really like those. So I like the thickness of the grips, and I like the aggressiveness of lock grips. Lock grips are called that for a reason because it locks your hand into place, and it absolutely does. So coupled with the grips and the amazing texture of the Shadow 2, another thing I really like about it, and I think it's better than the Shadow 1. Definitely better than the original Shadow. I actually forget sometimes because I have these wonky sandpaper grips that I threw on there at one point because I really like the look of wood grips, and I wanted some extra grip, so I put these dumb looking things on there. But I'll probably put a set of lock grips on there eventually. Just haven't done it yet because, again, I don't shoot this near as much now that I have these two. So I like the lock grips. That's one thing I would switch. And the other thing I do wish it would have is that when I reviewed the PPQ steel frame, I really like the full pick rail, and it made this kind of look dumb. So I may actually at some point have somebody mill me the full pick rail on one of my Shadow 2s, just for the sake of it looking cool. Other than that, there's really not much else I would switch. It is extremely accurate, extremely fast, extremely reliable. It's everything you could possibly want in a competition pistol for only about $1,200. The 2011 platform, I would say, is just a hair better, but not enough to make a real difference, and it's also very, very expensive. The magazines for this are going to be less than a 2011 by a lot, probably about a third the amount, and the gun itself is going to be less than half of the price of a 2011. So if you want to get a really good competition gun and you don't want to get a second mortgage or get a divorce, this is a really good way to go. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Please help out your local homeless shelters, and remember to recycle. I'll check you later.